Hey, it's Alex Belf, and welcome to Dig This. I'm joined this week by Chris Jones, a two-time National Magazine Award-winning writer during his time with Esquire, who woke up one morning at the age of 42, his life falling apart. This was back in 2016, after Jones lost his job, his marriage ended, and he had thoughts of ending his own life. The suicidal ideation is what got Jones the medical attention he needed, but the ways that he pieced his life back together, his heart, his soul, owes much to the healing virtues of being a sports fan, or being a diehard for one team. In Jones's case, that would be Burnley, a once 4th Division British soccer club, his mother's favorite, and now the team that Jones and his son Sammy follow. Legs, Hearts, Minds, Jones's candid new memoir about how it all went down and how he emerged on the other side of helplessness and rage and loss, not only a changed man, but a better man. Chris joins us this week in conversation. Stoked to chat with him. He's a great dude. With Legs, Hearts, Minds, this is going to be the question that everyone asks you to start. Why? Why this book? I mean, because you're somebody who strikes me as somebody who is like, and I got this sense from the book needed to be written because you needed to write this book. There was a sense of urgency, not panic, but a purpose that I felt as a reader coming off of you as the writer. But what was it that actually led to writing a book?
Boy, that's a question I should have answered before I started writing the book.
Did you know it was a book originally?
No, so the book evolved. So the original premise of the book, the original book proposal was not to spoil the book, but the football club I follow, Burnley, and a girlfriend I had named Anna, Burnley were relegated from the Premier League, and Anna and I broke up on the same Sunday in May. It was not a great day. And so Burnley go down to the championship. I'm alone again after, a really good relationship that followed my sort of calamitous divorce back in 2016. So it was like this double whammy. And the book in the original version was the next season. Burnley trying to climb back up and me trying to climb back up. And in different Burnley succeeded. Burnley came right back to the Premier League, and I started getting better. And in that first version of the book, so I wrote this book, and I went back to look at stuff that had happened to me in the past, and it was just too wedged in. It was like confusing, I think, for readers. And my editor is Andy Ward, who was my first editor at Esquire. And when I sold the book to him, I told my agent, I only want to write this book for Andy. And my agent, David Black, who's lovely, was like, that's fairly limiting for me. A one client book. But I was like, that's sort of the deal. And luckily Andy bought it. But Andy did not like the first version of the book. He thought it was claustrophobic and confusing.
And when you come to somebody like that, you have a very clear idea, the exact guy you want to work with on this book.
Yeah.
You get to him and he says, not really thrilled about this first version of it. Are you already totally giving yourself over and being like, yep, this is the guy I want to work with? If he's saying that we need to go back and like,
oh yeah,
I'm 100% I trust this guy.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to do the book with Andy, because Andy hired me in the first place, and we only got to work together for maybe 4 or 5 stories because he left for GQ not long after. And
we're doing the sports column in the
yes, yeah. Exactly. I was doing the sports column. So I wrote, I want to say 4 columns for Andy, and then he left. And I always loved him because he gave me my start in magazines. And he was my kind of editor in the sense, like really smart, but blunt. I don't want a lot of foof in my editing. And, we were talking before you started recording about how old we are. When I first started Esquire, we received our galleys by fax. So they would lay it out in Esquire font and we would and then Andy would hand edit the columns. And I remember once the facts coming out, and one of those brackets that like covers a lot of text, and it just went, "This is shit." And I was like, "Oh, this is maybe my second story for Esquire." And I actually, it was bracing, in the moment. I was horrified, but that's the kind of just frank talk I want. And when Andy didn't like the first version of Legs, Hearts, Minds, it even had a different title. It was called The Drop. I was like, okay, then it's wrong. Like then we'll do it again. And, he was basically like, chronology is your friend. It doesn't have to be one season, air it out. And then as I was working on the book, my mom got sick. And my mom is my connection to Burnley. And so the book, took a completely different tenor, sort of midway through the writing process. So it was
Was that exciting for you at all? That it's like, hey, here's this thing that I think I have contained, and all of a sudden you're halfway through and you're like, holy shit, I'm living this, and it wants to be something else here.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't exciting in the sense that my mom was ill, but I started, the book just became this larger meditation about loss. Originally it was about the loss of romantic love, and then it became really more a story about how to deal with losing. Which as a Burnley fan, you sort of get used to. Burnley's one of those teams that loses a lot.
I mean, and you talk so much about that in this book, Chris. Isn't that like sort of a sports writing? I don't know if it was Jimmy Breslin or somebody said, the loser's locker room is always more interesting than the winner's locker room.
Oh yeah.
I find the same thing as you're writing about the fandom of a particular sporting team to hold true.
Well, it's much more useful to you as a human being. Like my life, listen, I've had some great breaks and some big victories. I've also had a lot of losses, and I think that's like most of us. Like I think the idea that you're a dynasty and you're going to win 5 Super Bowl trophies in a row or whatever, that's not what most of our lives are like. And the lessons from your team, I do not envy someone who's a Manchester City fan and if they don't win the title, it's a bad year. What's the joy in that? I don't like when teams, like, winning is a relief as opposed to a celebration. Like, oh, we should have won and we did, thank God.
Yeah.
Who wants that? So Burnley teaches, being a Burnley fan sort of teaches you how to be harder, how to roll with the punches a little more. And, one of the slogans of the book, my mom used to say it all the time, in the UK, wait till next year as we go again. And it was one of my mom's, like, my mom was tough as hell, and one of her trademark, mantras was we go again. And through that experience with her, through being a Burnley fan, through my own life's trials, that was the overarching message for me. And that was a valuable message. Like you dig in and we go again.
Yeah. And there's also this incredibly beautiful, and you could take any sport really probably and substitute it, but there's a scene early in the book where you are weeping.
Probably.
and there is a friend of yours sort of comforts you, and
oh yeah,
what do you say is that you're like, feeling is the point. And,
yeah.
But there's another scene I think where like you're with like a couple of other dudes and like you're upset and there's this unspoken thing where they get it. You don't have to explain.
Strangers. Yeah.
This to me is, and particularly, and I'm sort of curious about how this affects you being from Canada, being Canadian in your own experience, but like in Britain, my stereotype is that there's a certain amount of repression.
Yes.
Compared to New York. I remember one time being in a traffic jam in London. And I said, why don't you fucking honk the horn? They're like, no, we don't do that. We'll mutter under our breath. But, New York, you just, before you even think about it, you're yelling out the window, whether it's smart or not,
Yeah.
So that idea of huge emotion, like sobbing, coming from a sort of repressed culture, like there's a sort of wordless exchange nothing needs to be explained as to the empathy of grown men with each other in that moment.
It's the one outlet. If I was crying because I was sad about something in my life, I think that would be sort of like, ooh, that guy's falling apart a bit. But because I was crying about football, that's totally acceptable. Like that is, for a lot of British men especially, that's their outlet.
Yeah.
Saturday mornings is their outlet. Sunday mornings is their outlet. Like that's the one time in the week they're allowed to unbutton. And for me, I am not a what's the word I'm looking for? My emotions are on the surface.
Yeah.
Like I cry very easily. I always have. I'm where my, I don't want to say I wear my heart on my sleeve, but I express myself a lot. And it's nice to find that one dovetail with my British where it's okay. That hug you're talking about was after Wales beat Belgium, and I was in the middle of this very tough mental period, and the soccer was what I was holding on to, and Wales won this improbable game, and I was crying and exhausted, and I staggered back to my hotel 2 in the morning, and I was working, like I wrote the story, and there was three Welsh fans just standing in the lobby quiet, just standing there. And I walked in and they looked over and they just knew that I'd been through what they'd been through. And one of them just opened his arms, and I just walked over and we all just kind of crying, and I have no idea who those men are. They are out there somewhere. There's three of them. They were so important to me when I was looking for connection and solace and love. And it was just four guys who were in it because of a football game. Like it was a beautiful, it was a beautiful moment for me. I don't know if they remember it the way I remember it, but for me, it was so important. And that I don't know their name. I know they're Welsh. That's what I know. And that's all. That's the connection we have.
It's beautiful, especially because sometimes I think when we think of fanatic fans,
Yeah.
particularly if we think about soccer fans, there is a kind of stereotype of maybe some of the aggressive, behavior of fans, the hostility, the violence. And actually, that's like a really interesting part of your book is your contention with violence, your experience with
Yeah.
it. You write about growing up, getting in fights, like punching people, like being punched,
Yeah.
that it's sort of a part of your kind of physical way of being in the world. Can you talk about, particularly at the beginning of the book, or actually sort of throughout the book, but how your relationship with anger affected your relationships?
Well, hugely negatively is the short answer. I've never been violent with a partner or anything like that. My violence generally came out in terms of, it started with sort of schoolyard fights. Um, then I got pretty deep into boxing as a younger, in my 20s. And then, growing up in a small town, I don't know if you've seen the TV show Letterkenny. Yeah. So that's my youth. Uh, and fighting was just how you settled disputes. Like it wasn't extraordinary to get in a fight. Like it was a very ordinary part of life.
Dangerous too. I mean, obviously, there's danger in getting your getting punched and your jaw broken or something like that. But was there, if it was sort of such a part of life, was there like not really an existential dread behind getting into a fight? It's just, it's what you do.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I got in a fight, which I detail in the book, like I was in seventh grade and I fought a kid named Terry Cook. Wasn't really sure why we were fighting. We sort of both got goaded into it. And he had braces, and I caught him in the mouth, and there was, blood coming out of his bottom lip, and I was horrified. Like uh, it's the first time I had made someone bleed, and it felt terrible to me. But I guess like anything that you're exposed to enough, it just became normal. It was just like a very, I didn't dread it. I wasn't scared of getting in a fight. People who know me would say I sought it. And the reason I sought it, what I know now, is, I was unhappy. I was insecure and I had all these questions about myself. And anger is a very easy emotion. It lets you feel something so that you can avoid feeling other things. Anger is like a block. And if you're angry, nothing else can really get in. And I think that's how I used it. And, there's a period in my life, I'm pretty ashamed about it now. You know, on when I first social media, when I first started on social media, I got in fights on there all the time, and I just thought it was part of
On Twitter. Yeah.
yeah, on Twitter all the time, and it was I just thought it was part of being a man. Like you stood up for your friends. If someone insulted you, you went back at them, and of course, when you're writing for a major magazine, people are not going to like every word you write, and people are going to criticize you. And I should have just been like, "Oh yeah, that's a fair point," or "Well, we disagree."
Yeah.
But instead, I took it the way I took real life, which is, if I'm walking down the street and someone went up to me and said, "Hey, fuckhead," I'd be like, okay, and then now we're gonna fight." Like that.
Yeah.
That's just it was just hardwired, and it's not an excuse for bad behavior. But it was just my baseline way of operating, and that did not serve me well. It did not serve me well in life. My marriage ended in large part because I was constantly angry. And again, not abusive towards my partners, but just a unpleasant presence. Like, who wants to live with a shadow? And I get that now. And so I've done a lot. The book is essentially, apart from the idea of going again, I hope catches the right person at the right time and they want to become a better, happier, healthier person. And a big part of that for me was addressing my anger. Like I don't want to be angry. It's not a pleasant feeling. And am I completely cured of it? No. Like I still can get a flashpoint.
Well, also,
But I try very hard not to.
it's not an inappropriate response to certain situations.
No, sometimes it's exactly right.
But
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. You're talking about something that could even be more like resentment, or if there's a deeper fuel to it. What's interesting to me is that I noticed that when I was like in my most rabid sport fan days, I used sports as a way to channel the anger.
Well, that's what a lot of people do. Yeah.
Yeah, to me, it was just like, okay, so like my wife and I just got into an argument. You motherfucker, he missed the tag. What the fuck? I'm throwing this fucking ball through the screen. I'm going to break the screen. Now, of course, you look on social media and you see people recording themselves being fans, which is sort of a performance. It's
Yeah.
quite somebody spontaneously throwing a shit fit. It's somebody filming themselves about to throw a shit fit.
Yeah.
But still, I think a lot of us can identify with using sports as the vehicle for our anger. But I didn't get the sense in your book that that was your
No.
outlet.
No. Sports for me were always, including soccer, when I played it, I got some anger out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was one of those guys who was, pretty okay off the field. And then as soon as I got on the field, I had the switch. Yeah. I just would take offense, and again, my entree in a sports participant, I played soccer as a kid, but then I boxed.
Yeah.
The whole boxing is a fight. You're
Come from hockey culture. So, I mean, it's like a
yeah.
physical game. Even if you play basketball, it's contact sport,
And hockey's a great example where how do you settle a dispute? You fight.
Yeah.
And then you take 5 minutes and then you're like, okay,
Good.
it's just a standard part of the game. Like people who it's just baked into the culture.
Question though, Chris, because as you were talking about how, okay, you get older, it impacted your marriage.
Yeah.
And so it was noticed, even if you're living in Canada. Did you notice amongst your peers, other Canadian men, for instance, that you're like, nah, this is kind of what we do? Or were even guys like Chris, think it's a little bit, might want to look at yourself a little bit, what's going on?
I mean, it's a spectrum. I have friends who are very much of the dude, you're kind of out of control.
Yeah.
But I also have friends who, will be the first to steam into a pile. And it's just like I can't say it's one or the other universally. And I'm not one or the other universally. Like I have not gotten to a physical fight Probably 5 or 6 years. I got in a fight in a bar in New York, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Um, but I still have it like where my instinct is violence, and it's I don't know how you ever quite get it all the way out. But this is by far the longest stretch of my life where I've not had a physical fight. I'm also 52. I can't be doing it anymore. Like I'm gonna get hurt. Like it's just
One of the things that I found really fascinating, Chris, about the way that you wrote the story, you were really vulnerable with your own self-examination, and I suspect that you are speaking for a lot of men out there. Your experience, particularly maybe guys who, okay, for instance, I grew up, dude, I've been in therapy, Upper West Side. I've been in therapy for 40 some odd years, right? So like
yeah.
that was, and just like violence was like, for you, like, no, you go, and so I also come from relative self-reflecting kind of family. And so that was sort of a natural fit. So, okay, I got a Catholic mom, I got a Jewish father. Bro, when you go to see your therapist and you have this thing where he says, do you feel shame or guilt? And you're like, no, I feel angry and sad. And he's like, great. Angry and sad is a lot easier to deal with than shame and guilt. And I'm reading this like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, I feel shame and guilt about 75 times a minute. Like, who is this person that goes through life? But I mean, as you already even discussed about thinking about like stuff with Twitter, and you went about it later, that shame does sort of bubble up into your experience of yourself. But I was just curious if you could sort of tease out a little bit what Gary was talking about in the differences, the subtle differences or dramatic differences between shame and guilt versus anger and sadness.
So Gary's my therapist in Canada. So this is post my marriage falling apart in 2016, and I had suffered from sort of anxiety and suicidal ideation, and had made one suicide attempt back in like 2009, and then sort of muscled through it. I didn't do anything about it in terms of therapy or medication or talking about it. I just kind of, like my mom would have, I just kind of bore down. Um, 2016, I didn't want to hurt myself, but I felt like I was going to hurt myself. And so I went to the hospital. And one of the beautiful things about Canada is, I went to the emergency room, saw a lovely doctor, Dr. Carr, and he prescribed me some medication to help me sleep. But then he was like, I want you to do therapy. And I was like, I don't want to do therapy. And he's going, well, then I'm not giving you the pills. And I entered therapy in like an emergency healthcare basis. Yeah. So Gary was randomly assigned to me. Like it's not like I picked him. And what I understand about other people's experience is if you get the wrong therapist, it's not helpful. Okay. Gary was exactly the right therapist for me, and I just happened to get him. And one of the things he did was, like you said, anger and sadness, for what I was going through at the time, were very normal emotions. Like he's like, it would be weird if you weren't angry and sad. Then you're a sociopath or something else is wrong with you. He's like, the problem becomes when it sits in you always. And my low level anger that I had probably for most of my adult life was like tinnitus. It was like in the background, just this little simmering low boil. And then it would have spikes. And, after my divorce, certainly had a huge spike. And shame and guilt is more cancerous, I guess. It's just harder to alleviate. Like anger and sadness, because they're normal emotions and sometimes suitable emotions.
They're sort of based.
They're not trauma based. It's not because I had a terrible childhood. It's not because I did something horrific that I could never get back. I'm just pissed off. Yeah. I think shame and guilt are hard to deal with because, as I write in the book, you're trying to forgive your former self. And as someone you can't have a conversation, as someone you can't confront, it's you. Yeah. So it's almost like you're apologizing to yourself, which is a really tough process, I guess. And I thought, when I had my first meeting with Gary, I was like, no, I don't have any shame or guilt. I was a good husband. I'm a good person. I worked really hard. I tried my best. Like, no, I have nothing to be ashamed about. That's the anger was filling that all my space. And so once the anger started to dissipate, once the sadness started to dissipate, oh, there's this little shiny black orb in me that is sort of regret for some pretty bad behavior. And that's the hard stuff to deal with. I still feel hot, like when I think about some of the things I said and done. Like that's shame, and that's still in there. But I have tried.
When you get to that place, because I can totally,
Get to the hot place.
yeah, when you get to the hot place, can you see it can you see a beginning, middle, and end of whether it's 10 seconds or 3 minutes or 4 days of like, is there a sort of circular, okay, I'm in that heat now, and is it going to cycle out where it gets really intense for a few minutes for a bit, and then it naturally sort of subsides? Or do you get in it and it's so uncomfortable that you do something to disrupt the feeling?
Oh, well, both. It depends on, I have sort of a anxious brain. Like I can get stuck on loops.
Oh yeah, and
So
talk
for-
about that. Talk about the part that you wrote about it early in the book, about how early in your career you had this sort of compulsion to
Oh God.
align every paragraph that you wrote.
I justify the right hand margin, but not because I used word to justify. I would write the sentences to fit each. If you can imagine, I mean, if you're writing 6,000 words and you're changing spaces and word choice to hit up it was exhausting. It was exhausting. Like, and I love writing, and it took the joy out of it. I just got stuck in this thing where it had to land. And, I would file these manuscripts that looked like a serial killer wrote them, like they were, and it was just my brain sort of demanded it. And that anxiety, when it comes to shame, it happens late at night for me. I'll wake up in the night feeling bad about something, and then I can't loosen it. It's like something's stuck in my teeth. And then it takes some work. Sometimes I'll just, I'm someone who sort of has flashes of memory where something will just pop in my head, and sometimes I'll remember a moment. I'll be like, "Oh my God, that was not good." And it passes pretty quickly. But there are other times I can really get stuck on something, and then I got to work through it. And I've tried to make amends. You're a magazine junkie. I did a story once on the animal massacre that happened in Zanesville, Ohio, when this guy named Terry Thompson let go of all these lions and tigers and bears. And GQ, a writer named Chris Heath, was on the ground at the same time, neck and neck. And at the time, I was my best slash worst competitive self. I was like, I'm going to kick his ass, and tried to scorch the earth around him. Our stories came out the same day. There was all sorts of Twitter garbage. All mine. Chris was nothing but kind and urbane and magisterial about all of it. And I was just this like troll in the corner, just thrashing around. And as part of my, I would later in life, as I was trying to get better, I sort of started feeling this like heat of shame about that whole incident. And I emailed Chris. I was like, listen, buddy, I'm so sorry. Like, you were nothing but beautiful. I was scared and I fucked up, and I'm so sorry. And I think he was suspicious at first. He was like, well, you were really horrible. I'm not sure I trust you. And I was like, I get it. I get that you don't trust me. I was a challenging individual. And all I can tell you is that I am really genuinely sorry. I don't want anything. I'm just genuinely sorry. And if you don't forgive me, that's okay. That's yours to give. I can't demand that.
Yeah.
And we ended up having a really nice exchange. So that's later in life. I started getting to that, almost like Alcoholics Anonymous thing where you go back and make amends. Like, I've tried to do that with a lot of people. There's a few I still need to do that with. The list is long of people I've probably had. I like to think I've also had some lovely encounters with people. If I'm in the right, back then, if I was in the right space, I think I could be a nice person. But
Well,
I did
I met
have a
you
lot of
at
income.
the Heinz Memorial, and we had nothing but like a pleasurable interaction. And like, I was always like, Chris Jones is the best guy ever. We hung out. Like, that's why, like, later, actually, when the whole Twitter thing was happening for you, I was like, this doesn't grok for me. Like, this doesn't seem like this is another part of the guy that I met. I was like, but this isn't the guy that I was talking to. Which wasn't to say that that wasn't completely authentic, but like,
I pick sides. If I felt like someone was on my side, I would ride or die with them. My writer friends once, I got a text. I can't remember if it was a text or a phone call. One of my friends were discussing who they would call if they had to hide a body, and I was the unanimous choice. And they told me, and I was so deeply touched. I was like, it's like the nicest thing anyone could ever say. It's like, and so with friends, ride or die. And if I decided that I didn't like somebody, then I could be the worst person in the world. And I think it was just
and do you
I had a very black and white view.
edge in the way that you're relating to people in the world?
No, I try not to have that as much. I was what I guess what you would call a universalist, where I thought the way I thought about something is the way everyone should think about something. I for some reason I was like, well, I'm right, and I couldn't recognize that other people just might have an opposing point of view, and that they weren't terrible people just because they had an opposing point of view. I
came from a family where not only was being right very important, but my father even said to me one time, he says, it's not so much that I have to be right. I have to make sure that you know you are wrong.
That's 100%. That's it. I was like, I need you to submit here.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the fighting thing. I think it's like,
then you realize it's about something else. It's not about that thing. It's about the thing behind the thing.
Yeah. So insecure that I need to win this little battle. And I see it now all the time in other people where I'm like, oh, you need this win because you're upset about something in your life. Like, you need a hug, really, but I'll give you this victory because you need it. And that's I like to think through therapy and a lot of self-resolution and self-reflection, and a lot of loss. Someone sending you a mean tweet starts to pale when your mom gets cancer, or when you get divorced, or when your life falls apart. Like, all of a sudden it's like, that doesn't really wash anymore. So through all those things, I like to think I've developed, I wouldn't say a thicker skin because I'm still very emotional, but more resilience to the grit of everyday life, I guess is what I would call it.
And it's also having a deeper experiential perspective. Of course, you would understand that intellectually if you say, oh, if I lost a marriage, or if I lost a parent, that would be devastating, but like, no, then somatically, if you go through it, it's not theory anymore, man. Like,
yeah,
you live this.
Yeah.
One thing that I found really interesting about the book, when you were first in your therapist's office, there's a point where you sort of say that you're clocking the room and you're looking at, the books behind. I'm a great one to go to somebody's house and be like, well, what do their books say about that?
That's what we do.
Right.
That's what we do.
But you talk about, like, you're reverting to your professional. This is what you do. You go places and you observe things. You do clock your surroundings, everything. Dialogue, atmosphere, the smell of something, where all of your senses are heightened. What was it like for you, as somebody who does this professionally, to then turn the reporting around and report on yourself?
I was surprised at how many corrections I had to make to my memory.
Oh, wow.
Like, so the book is reliant on memory.
So you mean inflating dates like this month and
dates? Time is a particular problem for me. Always has been. Like, I don't have I'm extremely punctual, but I don't have a good sense of time. Like, if someone said something happened a month ago, a year ago, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have a lot of this. I'd have to really think about where was I in life, and I have to do the math. I don't have an innate sense of like, that was a long time ago. That was yesterday. And I understand that memory is a fallible thing. My dad's a criminal psychologist, and one of his tricks he used to do in class is he would have someone come into the class, do something terrible, and then run out, and then he would ask the students to describe the person, and the range was vast. And it just to prove that memory is not a super reliable tool. So I would report when I could. I would use medical records, or I'd go back and look at things. And I actually wrote a story for Esquire where, um, you know, my first bout with real depression when I was suicidal back in, see, I still have to think about what year it was. So I would have, yeah, but I would have, it was, I, I probably said '09 earlier in this.
You
It was,
did. That's the only reason I said it. Yeah.
it was '07. And in my head, my second son was born. Sammy was born. He was born in 2008. So that stuff happened then. And the way I found out, one of my real considerations was I walked out on the Golden Gate Bridge after a book reading that didn't go very well. And there was a lot of stuff in my life that wasn't amazing. And I remember standing on the bridge and going, I could jump off this thing. I found an ad for the book reading from 2007. And I'm like, that was 2007. And in my head, my younger son was born. Like it's such a weird thing to realize how fallible memory is. So looking at yourself, being very honest about yourself, but also trying to be factual about yourself. It's a process, like a self-reporting process.
Yeah.
And one of the things that stuck with me from my Esquire days is my editor was Peter Griffin, an incredible editor, like, yes, best editor, like a Yoda. And
Also, not for nothing, I'm going to blow up that freaking guy's spot right here.
yes, let's do it.
Often, somehow, the quietest guy in the room, or like, if not
always.
if not the quietest, then the least, especially in a room where you have lots of ambitious people who are wanting to get their voice heard, he would not be that guy. And yet, always probably the smartest, most interesting guy in every room he's ever been in.
Because he knows he doesn't. So I would be worried about myself, and so I'd act like an idiot to try to compensate. Peter knows how smart he is, and he knows what he doesn't know, and so he's calm about it. He doesn't need to
Yes.
People who are genuinely brave don't talk about how brave they are. People who are pious aren't like, I'm very holy. They're just quietly holy. Like and that's
Strength of knowing what you don't know. Because even when you were talking about before, the fact that, time is not like something that's intuitive for you, you're aware of that, and you're going to use that as a kind of superpower to like fuel your reporting.
Yeah, you have to be aware of your weaknesses, and Peter is just the best. I could be wrestling with something, and he would go, "Well, how about this?" And you go, "God damn it!" Like, of course. And I would get so upset because I'm like, I'm a professional writer. Like, I should see that.
Yes.
And it's just he could look at something and just go, "Dook," and you go, "Ah."
Also, really, that's for people who have not had incredible experiences with editors, as you
Yes.
really have. You're talking about
Great editors, a lifetime of great editors.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's really interesting about Peter Griffin, and he said this to me. He said, in some cases, great editors are also wonderful writers.
Mhm.
Peter, who has edited hundreds of fantastic stories, will tell you straight-faced, and I do not think he's being inauthentic. I could not write one of these. Even having edited a million of these, I cannot do this. This is not what I do. What I do is edit them really well. So whether he can or not, that's its own argument. But the idea is that for Peter is an editor. He's not a writer editor. He is an editor. And what his job is he knows how to work with writers and make writers better. He knows how to make the story better. He knows you as a writer to know things about you that because you're in the weeds, you can't see. And that is just, as you know, it's a magical experience that one would just hope that other people could have.
Oh, different, and it's a different skill. Like, I won 2 National Magazine Awards. Both of those stories, Peter made just the smallest the big suggestions that he said in a sentence.
Yes.
That are the reason I won those awards. Like he he should easily have his name on those awards. Like he's just the best. But one of the things, just going back to where we started, like I was working on a story about how a soldier's body gets back from Iraq, the things that carried him. And every soldier who dies goes to this mortuary in Dover, Delaware, and it was gruesome. And I had befriended, Joey Montgomery was the soldier I was writing about, and I had befriended his mom, Gail. And I was worried about writing stuff about Joey that she didn't know that happened at Dover. And so I didn't put it in the story. And Peter read my first draft and he was like, I know that you're holding back here. I can see it and readers will see it. And he's like, I suspect I know why you're holding back. But if you're going to do a story like this, you got to go all the way with it. And that has always stuck. And so when I was working on this book, and Andy said the same thing, Andy was like, if there is a trace of men's magazine machismo in this, I am going to stamp it out like a fire. Like, you have to be honest and vulnerable. This will not work if you're holding back. And so both Andy and Peter, two guys I respect totally, and two guys who are responsible for my career, essentially, saying the same thing every time I would get nervous about sharing something in the book. I would be like, I've asked subjects to do this for years. I've asked people to give me their deepest secrets, and then I'm going to tell them to a million people. It would be so hypocritical of me not to do that now. And people, one of the words that has come up in early reviews and stuff is raw. And even my English editor was like, "Are you worried about having said too much, shared too much?" And not one ounce of me is worried about that. Like I have so much anxiety about other things, but that is like, that's the
It's
deal.
interesting too when we talk about the notion of, because it's such a bullshit word in a way, vulnerability.
Yeah,
Not a bullshit
yeah.
word.
No, I know what you're saying.
It's a misused word. But what I find interesting is that you could say something intimate, and I could say that's vulnerable. And you could be like, actually not vulnerable at all. It's really easy for me to talk about something that you might find vulnerable. Whereas there might be something else for you that is true vulnerability, because it's like,
Right. Yeah.
But
I don't think I have that.
mean.
I don't think I have anything. I can genuinely say I'll talk about anything.
Yeah.
And I've said that. That's not new. Like, I have been very honest with people about things for a long time.
Where's the line then? And actually, I just wanted to just double back for a quick second. Did Joey's mother, what was her response when you did put that information in the things?
Oh, so I had to deal with that. That whole journey was one of those, they try to teach that stuff in school and you have to experience it. And so I called Gail before the story came out. The big detail that she didn't have that I knew, Joey had stepped on an IED and his legs had been blown off. And when Gail opened his casket, the morticians had built legs and there was a stuffed pair of pants, essentially. So she didn't know. She saw like an intact Joey. And that was a major worry of mine, is her just reading that alone one day. So I called her up and I said, listen, you don't have to read this story, and I don't think you should read this story. She was like, well, I'm going to read the story. And I said, then I think there's some things we need to talk about. And so I told her. And we had that's a tough, she wept. Like that was a really difficult conversation. But at that point, I had such a relationship with Gail where I was like, I am not going to have you sitting alone in your house finding that information out. We're going to talk about it now. And so that was my way of sort of dealing with that.
So your sense of responsibility there was to yourself and the story as a journalist, but the human in you, the person who had empathy, was holding you back from doing your best journalism.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
You saw this, he reminded you this is what the job is, and
Yep.
then you handled it in the way that you did by the human part of you reaching out to the subject and being like, look, heads up, this is what's going to happen. And you could have chosen to do that any kind of way. You talked about before how like talking about like some of the tensions you've had with people. Well, there's an example of where you were like a real mensch with somebody.
Well, but also self-interested because I didn't want to live with the guilt of doing that to Gail. Like it is, am I being a mensch or am I protecting myself? I don't know who I'm protecting in that both.
You can do both.
You can do both. And
As an official mensch, I can say that you can officially do both. Because honestly, the part that you might think of as self-serving is actually being a mensch to yourself.
oh, that's possible. Yeah, because I don't want to live with something. Yeah.
And that's not being like fucking self-serving. That's being a fucking, that's what a mensch means, a human being. It's the literal word of what it means in Yiddish.
Is it? That's what a mensch is?
To be a human being.
Oh, that's
what it means. It means to be a human fucking being, you know?
Oh, that's
Beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. You're seeing the person. So like to follow up on that then, what was it like either in
I'm enjoying this so much, by the way. I'm enjoying this so much.
Oh, cool. Me too. The other thing is like to follow up on that then, both as you're composing, but then as you're finishing the draft, how do you deal with your ex-wife, Amy, and the fact that you're writing about your divorce, you're writing about an extramarital affair, you're writing about her life, and she's a living person. She's the mother of your two children. And I don't want to, I won't tell the audience what the arc of the story is, and there is a real dramatic arc to it. But how did that sit with you, and how did you address something as vulnerable as that because you're dealing with somebody else's life, not just your own?
Yeah, I mean that's something I still worry about. Like
She read the book?
She has not read the book. She will read the book before the book comes out. Well, if she chooses to.
Yeah.
The book is very honest about our relationship. I was hellacious mad. If I'd written the book 10 years ago, it would be a very different book. In fact, my friend Kevin Van Valkenburg back at the time was like, don't write about this. Because he knew I would write something that I would come to regret. So taking time with it, and I see now much more clearly where I was at fault. And I have tried in the book to be as fair to her as I can be in the sense of I was deeply wounded by everything that happened, but they were self-inflicted wounds in some ways. She made mistakes. I made mistakes. Now it's about moving forward in a way that is the best for our kids, first of all, and then the best for each other. And once you have kids with somebody, they are part of your life forever. And Gary, bless him, I was spinning one time. I just couldn't get over my anger, and he clocked my competitive side, my choosing of sides, and he said, "I'm just curious how much more of your life you're going to let her ruin." And I just went, and that moment was just helped me reframe things where I'm like, if being angry at her doesn't change anything that happened, it doesn't fix anything that happened.
It's actually spinning plates in a weird way.
You're not progressing.
You can do it forever and it's always so tempting, but you're fucking spinning plates in a way.
It's bad for you.
Yeah.
It hurts you. And it doesn't do anything to the person you're mad at. It affects every other relationship in your life. It's just something, I don't want to sound trite about it. It was really hard to get over it. It's not like I just flipped a switch and but we got to a place, and our relationship ebbs and flows. Like, married couples fight, divorced couples fight, and you're not trying to save a marriage. So it's the forgiveness stretch is more interesting. Yes.
When I read Tom Junot's memoir this spring, there's a part of it where he's talking to a woman on the LIR. He's taking a train, and he's just so gripped by the story and reporting his family story, and he tells it to this woman, and she says, or he says something, she says, about anger. And he goes, well, you mean beyond the fact that I'm writing a book? You know, like meaning that the idea that if the act of writing a memoir about your family is in some ways motivated by anger, your book, you are discussing anger is one of the main themes of the book. Sort of, there was a book that Andre Dubus III wrote about years ago called Townie, which was really about some of the things that you write about. But like, was there any part of you writing this book, even though you're not the guy you were in 2016, where the anger was a motivator? I'm a middle-aged guy. I just lost my job. I lost my family. There's a sense of rage, impotence, self-pity, not impotence, but
don't know. That's not a bad word.
Yeah, but you know, or frustration, helplessness.
Yeah. Had I written the book 10 years ago, that it would have been a purely angry book. It would have been a screed. It would have been my version of planting a bomb under a car. And I'm really glad Kevin was a very good friend. Because for me, as I mentioned for you, for a lot of writers, writing is how I've always sort of dealt with stuff. Like I've written lots of things not to be published. I've written them to sort of process something. It's how I sometimes
said, I think she said, I write so I can figure out what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I do that all the time. It's like how I process. It's like, well, why am I feeling this? I'll start writing and see where it goes. And it's, I did that as a kid. Like that's not new. I can genuinely say no part of me wrote the book from a place of anger. I wrote the book from a place of, I feel like this will sound, I hope this doesn't sound treacly, but like, I wish I had this book 10 years ago. It would have been very helpful to me. And I think often about friends of mine who are going through the same, there's times in your life you enter your married years and you enter your kid, all your friends are having kids, and then a bunch of friends are getting divorced. Yeah. And I can see friends of mine who are in the middle of loss, and they're making mistakes that I made. And I'm like, I don't want you to make these mistakes. I wish I would have handled everything better if I could have seen 2 years, 3 years, 4 years into the future and been like, oh, it's going to be okay. I think when you're in that first initial phase of just sheer panic where your life is falling apart and all your plans are dust, it's really hard to go, it's going to be okay. You're just like, especially the way my brain works, I was just wound up so tight. The book for me is like a pressure release valve, both for me and hopefully for readers who need it.
Also, just the idea of the death of a parent. I mean, it's such a major thing to experience. I have, my father died almost 20 years ago, but I have 2 in-laws and I have a mom and a stepfather, all in their 80s. And there is a sense of daily sense of mortality, of their mortality, of pending loss. You don't even have to have experienced the loss yet. Your body is like waiting for it, which then brings us closer to our own mortality. And this is, like you said, this is the time of life. But loss really is the main unifying theme in your book in many ways. Loss of marriage, loss of relationship, loss of, but also the loss of a certain time in your life. You were there for your boys when they were boys, and now they are no longer boys.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I'm not a dad, so there's a lot about parent-child relationships that I can only experience them from the outside. And what's even funny is that even now, as an adult, 55 years old, I still tend to identify with the child because I'm not a dad. Even if dads are my peers, but the sections with you and Sammy in particular. I'm not going to cry right now, but I'm telling you, bro. I told my wife before we started this, I was like, what are the odds on who cries first, Chris or me?
Yeah.
Because just getting to that age where crying comes a little bit more naturally, but the sequence in which you bring your boy to England to watch this game, And at the end of the game, and you're with him, and you're watching you even described something like putting your arms around him and his broadening shoulders. I mean, we see this boy not he's becoming a man in front of
Yeah.
you, you know, and the continuity of when you started rooting for this team because you're passed down through your mom and where they were, you know, as
Mhm.
sort of so was it the fourth league or something? I don't know.
Fourth division. When I started, yeah, they were in the fourth division, the bottom.
And then like where they are now when your son Sammy and sort of using it as a kind of beautiful metaphor as like the seemingly every parent's wish is for their child to have it easier than they did. And from an internal point of view, as well as having material things that they want, you don't want to make these same mistakes, don't want to have to struggle in the same way. And at one point, you're back in the hotel room with your son, and you're listening. You got the headphones on, and
Yeah.
you think the kid is like upset about something. He's over looking on his phone, and you have all these, and you take off your headphones, and he's laughing.
Yeah.
Thinking of what he's looking at.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's fatherhood is just well, I don't even know how to explain it. I This will sound horrible. I could have gone through life without having kids.
Mhm.
It wouldn't have been much of a push for me not to have kids.
Yep.
I wouldn't say I was ambivalent about having kids, but I was pretty neutral.
Mhm.
Um, my wife at the time really wanted kids.
Mhm.
And I was like, well, I want to be with you. You want kids. We're going to have kids. And I was not a natural father. I did not care for babies. I still don't love a baby. Um, but as they started growing up, I have two boys. Charlie, the elder one, has autism and is a classic nerd, books. He's like one half of me. And then Sammy is pure jock, other half of me. And it's so weird to see yourself and your kids. And it's so weird to see the bad parts of you and your kids. And to be like, no, 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 I don't want that for you. Um, and Sammy has a bit of my
The bad part of kids, or is it just the maybe troubled or damaged part of you?
well,
I'm being an asshole, dude. I'm challenging
no,
not call it bad.
not bad. Like, the hard parts of you, the hard parts of life.
Yep.
Sammy has some of my emotional tendencies, and it makes me nervous. And
Fight like you?
no, so he has never been in a fight. And I will say, we were talking about sort of my upbringing. It's not like that now. Like in Canada, certainly. Well, my son's experience is, they've never been in a fight. Fantastic.
Yeah.
If there's a fight at Sammy's school, it's girls. It's rarely boys. And Charlie is someone who in the 70s or 80s would have been bullied mercilessly, and he's never experienced that or rarely experienced that. It's a different time. So no, Sammy does not have the violence, which I'm very happy about. I saw sort of glimpses of it when we were in the UK because you're yelling at rival fans, and he got deep into that, and I kind of went, oh, there's a little bit. And it's like you sort of the way dogs turn their heads when your dog's like, well, oh, there's something there. But for me, it's more what I worry about Sam more is the sort of anxiety, the that kind of stuff is in him a little bit. And the thing is, his life is, I can say till all day long, his life is beautiful. Like he's gotten so many gifts. Sammy's gotten so many gifts, and I just want him to recognize that. That's all. And you want these things for your kids. The truth is, they're gonna make mistakes. And that's part of them becoming a better person too. You can't protect them from everything, and it's just a hard. It's crazy to me that there's no license to be a parent. Like it is nuts. Like you need a license to drive a boat, and like anyone can be a parent, and it's crazy because it is. so beautiful and so hard. It is such a weird, and this is not me like, uh, if you don't have kids, you haven't lived life. That is not true. I would never subscribe to that, and it's a choice.
No, the funny
But
thing is like just as I don't know what it's like not to have kids, you don't know what it's like, or I don't know what it's like to have kids. You don't know what it's like not to. I mean, you can, we can both fantasize what it's like, but that's
yeah,
what it is. It's just us telling stories, you know.
so quiet.
No.
It must be so quiet, so peaceful.
That's funny.
It must be.
That you say that because my wife is quieter than I am, and I just feel like a fucking monster. Plus, I live in Vermont now, dude. So like, just being like Jewish or just being from New York, you just feel like, am I shouting? Like, what? And everyone here is like, Vermont's dope, but there's like a lot of nice people. You know, there's like a lot of
Yeah.
nice. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yo, what the, you know? And I'm not walking around like, hey, fuck it. You know, I'm not a New York accent, but people know me as New York Alex in the area just because, yeah, fucking, it's quiet here, dude. It is quiet. Now, the last thing I wanted to mention, just to sort of tie it up with sports.
Yeah, good luck. Tie it up.
Yeah, exactly.
Ah,
No, but
bring it home, Alex.
but one thing I love that you wrote about because you talk about a certain breed of British soccer fan, but this
Oh.
could be a Mets fan. This could be like a
Yes.
fan for any. What is it? Was it called
Homo miserabilis.
Homo miserabilis? That's what it was, bro. Can you just in your own words explain to us this phenomenon that every sports fan is very, very well acquainted with?
Oh man. Well, the Mets fans should be. I mean, they have every right to be. That team is horrible. There's a subculture of British soccer fan. So the hooligan element is the one that gets all the attention. That's actually greatly diminished from what it was certainly in the 80s. That it's not like that now. Much the way that my upbringing was more violent than my kids' up is different. Right. But there is a fandom that is impossible to please, and they are watching the soccer basically so they can yell and be upset. And it's like, I think it's like what you're talking about, where sports are their outlet to be miserable.
Well, it's like that old joke, the Jewish joke, right? Like when like from Annie Hall, where the two old ladies are at the Catskill Resort, and one lady says, the food here is so terrible, and the other one says, yeah, in such small portions. They're just like content to be fucking miserable, you know?
Yeah.
Or like the waiter that goes to the Jewish ladies and he says, is anything here okay? You know, like,
yeah.
But then with a lot of beer or like just rage behind it too. It's like we were saying in the beginning, it's like, this is the valve.
Yeah. Except for them, it doesn't seem to help. Like it's like, and they're a species. Certainly in football, soccer, they're physically a type. They're like late middle aged, kind of mottled and bulbous, and they try to dress sort of fashionably, but it was fashionable like in 1989. Pinched. And the first one Sammy and I encountered, and Sammy delights in them. Sammy thinks they're hilarious. The first one we encountered was at a Tottenham game. And this guy arrived and he sort of sits in his seat next to me and his friends are waiting for him. They're like, how you doing? And he literally goes, fucking shite. And it's the first thing out of his mouth. And he's screaming about this game. Spurs are playing Nottingham Forest. Wasting money, and just like the ref, take his guy. He was like they were committing war crimes. Like he was just angry. And Spurs, he gets up. Spurs win 3-1, and he gets up and he's like, referee ruined this game, fucking ruined it. And I'm like, you won. Like, what is your problem? And then the next day we went to a game at Fulham, which is sort of a quieter, posh club in London, and this guy is just screaming. And now Fulham were losing; they were playing Arsenal, and they were losing. And at halftime, he just goes, "Fuck mine," and leaves. And I'm like, "Okay. I mean, you had a great day. You're gonna go home and do something terrible to your wife, like." But they're everywhere, and what's horrifying for me about them as a species is I can see it wouldn't have taken much of a push for me to become one. Like I'm like, oh, that's the path I was kind of on.
Yeah.
And then my life exploded and I was like, I don't want that.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need that kind of cataclysm
Yes.
to make the correction. And maybe they didn't have the cataclysm. And so they've just continued on this steady, I was going to make an ascent, steady descent into this just ball of rage. And it's such an unhealthy, unhappy. Sammy just giggles at them, which is such a funny, because British insults are by far the best in the world. You know, they'll be Muppet, Pellet, you know, just these words where you're just like, Muppet is the best. Fucking Muppet. And you're just, and Sammy's just like, which of course just makes them enraged.
Right.
It's the best. It's like, anyway.
It's like a really much more aggressive version of like that degenerate gambler thing that used to go to OTB, like Walter Matthau. Walter Matthau, they used to say he only was happy as a gambler when he was losing. Like he was like, winning wasn't going to be good, but like that's a sort of like interior like misery. Whereas this is much more like,
well, I think it's both. I think they have it inside and it comes out, but it doesn't come out and then they're done with it.
yeah.
I feel like they're miserable. And it's just, I'm like, why are you here? Why do you do this to yourself? Like, I have an uncle who I love very much, who's a Spurs fan, and he can no longer watch Spurs. They're having a very tough season, but he no longer watches the games because he knows it ruins him.
Yeah.
He'll look at the score afterwards and be like, fuck, you know, but he's like, I can't do that anymore. And I'm like, why are you a fan? Why are you doing this? This is voluntary.
Yeah.
You are volunteering to make yourself miserable. And it's such a weird, it's like social media. When I look back at my former self on social media, I was like, no one paid me to do that. I was volunteering to be shitty and to be angry and to let people get under my skin. What was I thinking? It's just luckily I had my life explode and then I was able to do something about it.
Well, it's sort of funny talking about like, you know, being a parent and just, you know, the natural concern you have for your son's the decisions they make, the mistakes they wanting to protect them. And yet this entire book is evidence that the mistakes that, quote, the difficulties, the struggles you've had in your life has actually made you a better person. Like you wouldn't be where you are now if you didn't go through those dark times.
100%. That's absolutely true. I do sometimes wonder if I'd been better in the start, maybe then I don't go through the dark times and I don't need to make the corrections. That's the way I think. It's like, yes.
You know, if a frog had wings, you wouldn't bump his ass a hopping. You know what I mean? Like, I mean,
yeah,
like
100%.
It's a perfect, like, I'm only saying that to you because I say that to myself a million. I mean, there's still things from sixth grade, like whatever that are still, like you said, even with time, I'm like, wait, no, it just happened. You know, it's still there. Okay, I did say the last thing, but I would be remiss.
No, let's talk all day.
Yeah.
I don't want to do anything else today.
Well, you know, you talk about like, you know, part of the fabric of this book is soccer and you being a fan of a particular team and what that means to you, but you're also a professional sports writer. During these years, you're covering the game professionally. You're going to World Cups. And so as a kind of part of your life, you know, you happen to be several feet away from Grant Wahl when he passed away.
Yeah.
Covering the World Cup. And that section of the book kind of came out, it didn't really come out of nowhere because you've already written about yourself covering soccer professionally. But I had forgotten, like, oh my God, this is what this is going to be right now. You know, Grant Wahl is a longtime Sports Illustrated writer who then, you know, branched out on his own and horribly, was it a heart attack that he suffered? Or was it a stroke?
It was his heart. Yeah.
And so this is happening in the midst of you covering this like incredible international spectacle.
Yeah.
You're witnessing not just a private personal tragedy, but in the world of sports writing, a major tragedy. Again, lost. So this makes this is just another incident in which that you, as the reporter reporting this story, come across. How, as a writer in the book, did you delicately, I don't know how to put this, how do you write about something like that tonally and make it fit into your story without sort of standing out because it's such an intense episode.
Well, I don't know if I did or not. Like I wrote about that honestly. It was a highly, it's tricky because Grant's death is not about me. Grant's death is about him, and I write this in the book. It's about him and the people who loved him. Grant was my friend, and I had a lot of sort of strange connections with Grant. Like he took me under his wing in a lot of ways, even though we were the same age. Like our birthdays are a couple of days apart, and he gave me a lecture once about, I would say football in front of the British writers so that I could kind of fit in. And he's like, you should say soccer. And he gave this beautiful explanation about how soccer is an English word and it's a diminutive for association. And that's what Grant and I both love about the game. And soccer is like a point of pride for him. And we shouldn't give a shit what the Brits think about us. We can love soccer too. Like a very important conscience for me. And his dying in front of me was and this was 2022, and I had just broken up with Anna, my girlfriend, and that was, I was in this muddle, and it just, again, it's Grant's death wasn't about me, but it made me think a lot about my own life and how I had reached the age where it's possible that something like that happens to me. And I had a lot of unfinished business. And the way Grant operated always inspired me. And I don't know how to word this exactly. Like his death also inspired me in a different way to be a better person and to fix my mistakes while I had time. Grant lived very authentically to himself. And I haven't always. And again, it wasn't shame that I felt, but I'm someone who could have killed myself 10 or 20 years ago, and there are all sorts of people fighting to live. My mom fought to live. Grant would, I'm sure, want to be alive. Like I couldn't help but have that happen and start thinking about all these things. And I hope it's, I did wonder as I was writing it, it's just offensive to write about it. I'm being honest about where my thoughts were. And I was devastated by Grant's death. Like it was, um, I won't pretend he was my best friend, but he was my friend. And just watching that happen
It's a highly unusual experience.
never happened to me in my life. Like it, and the fallout from it was so. The backdrop, Argentina are playing the Netherlands in this crazy game, and we're in this stadium that's just full of cheering, and my friend is dying, and social media, it became that the Qataris had killed him, or that we were all going to get sick with what he was sick with and die. You're just getting, my phone was just people, you need to come home, you're going to die. It's just like, there was so much happening. It was just I don't even know how to explain that whole experience. But it was I miss Grant. I think about him a lot when I'm watching soccer. He pops into my head in the strangest times where I'm like, oh, Grant would love to see this. This World Cup, a North American World, Grant would be in his element.
Are you going to be covering it this year?
Yeah, I'm covering it. I'm following. So I work. I'm going to cover it for CBC, which is the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. So I'll be following Canada. And for sure there'll be times when I think of Grant. And I hope the book honors. I think that scene is hard, but it's factual and it is what happened. And I hope it also shows. I hope I honor Grant in that scene. And again, I think what I want people to remember of Grant is how true he was to himself, and how I definitely use his memory to aspire to the same kind of truth about myself.
Funny, you talked about these kind of wake up calls,
Yeah.
which are the tragedies. Wake up calls come in the form of devastation and loss and real irrevocable life situations.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately.
Being able to use these sort of things as not like, why is this happening to me? What, but to use each one of them as a kind of point of self-reflection of like, wait, this is what I'm carrying forth of grants, is applying a little bit of that self authenticity to myself in my own way. That's a quiet thing. I'm not saying that I'm talking to you for public consumption right now. That would be something one would do privately, you know what I mean? But just to know that your mom's passing, even the separation or the divorce from your wife, from Amy, was as messy as it was, or however complicated it was that it happened. You seem to write about it in such a way where you're like, I don't want to give away the end of the book, but you're not in a worse place at the end of the book than you are when you.
No, that wouldn't be much of a book. No,
Different kind of book.
it'll be a different kind of book. It's, but I also don't want to say like, oh, I've come through it and everything's perfect and I'm totally undamaged.
Yeah.
So that's not true. I've got lots of rocks in my pockets, and like I think we all do. I think this is what I go back to every time. Like, I think in some ways my experiences over the 8 years that the book covers, it was a lot.
It was what?
It was a lot. Like a lot happened. But I think they are all not typical, but like most people will experience many of those things.
Yes.
That's life.
Yes.
And what I'm trying to do is share, that it is okay to be damaged, that it is okay to feel these things. And it is also very much okay to try to become better because of them. Like that's to find the desire and the strength to want to improve yourself, not just for you, but for the people who love you and the people you love. Like that, for me, that's sort of the, nope. So I win. For me, it's so much about wanting to be better for the people who love me. And when someone loves you, they're honoring you in a weird way. They're saying you're worth this. I'm going to give you this. And it's such a gift. And for me, it's all about now every day I'm asking myself, I have this amazing girlfriend, Jenny, and I'm asking myself every day, like, how can I justify her loving me? Because I am hard to love sometimes. And what can I do to make her life better? What can I do to make my kids' life better? What can I do to make the world slightly better? That is my constant motivation now. And that was not always my motivation. It was my motivation used to be something harder and darker. And I'm glad I've gotten to a place where my motivation is love.
And as you talk, first of all, you talk about that with Sammy. You say, Sammy's got a lot of that love in him.
Oh, he sure does. He's a big-hearted boy.
But you also talk about, that
Sorry, Alex.
the pathway, don't ever fucking apologize. That the pathway to this stuff is not actually outside of yourself, but inside of yourself. So, okay, that sounds great, but like, I'm not saying there's no place in the book where this doesn't feel like a therapy book. It doesn't feel you write about going into some personal therapy, but it's not advocating for therapy. It's not a self-help book. You really avoid all of those tropes. And yet at the same time, you're talking about being a man with suicidal ideation, midlife, with a fucking lot on your plate and no place to fucking deal with it. This is a universal situation.
Yeah, unfortunately.
A human condition that is going to impact. Now, I'm telling you, I've been in therapy, psychotherapy for a lot of my life. I am the rarity amongst dudes. I'm in the minority. I'm not trying to say it's better or worse. I'm just saying that my experience is probably not the norm. Your
Yeah.
experience is closer to what millions of men are experiencing. And I think, to your point, you're giving voice in sharing your story, calling it raw, whatever you want to call it. The fact that you're putting yourself out there in this way, to me, I think a lot of men will be able to see themselves in your same predicament. Because that's what you're talking about. You're writing about the predicaments. And
Yeah.
you are sharing a particular avenue that you took where you were able to find some relief. And you knew you were at a crossroads. I used to go like this, but now you're going up to the cop. You're going up to a police officer and you're like, bro. And he's like, okay, bro. And you're actually having a conversation before you've done this, which is already, for some people, you should throw yourself a ticker tape fucking where you originally came from,
Yeah.
in that spot. But in describing that sort of, again, not to say that everything is kumbaya at the end, but in describing that pursuit, that is sort of giving an avenue to a lot of men to read this and be like, huh. Like you said, you wish that you could have read this book 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, I don't think my solution is a universal solution. I think my problems are universal problems.
Correct.
And this, like you say, this is one. My former self would have been like, "No, there's one way to deal with this. Is this way." This is how I've dealt with it, and through a lot of help and good advice from people who cared about me. Like it's not like I'm some hero crusader with a shield. I threw myself down at the feet of a lot of people, and a lot of people, another one of the sort of sub themes of the book is I think most people are good, and a lot of people help me, like the cop you're mentioning, or Gary, Jenny, all these people.
About having to prove you want to be better for other people, but
I want to be someone who makes life better for other people. I don't want to be poison. I don't want to.
True too, but Chris, there's got to be something about you that people like because if you were a total piece of shit, like people wouldn't have hung out with you, and like they wouldn't have like given you such a long leash. Now you might have like tried people's patience, you might have pushed it, you know what I mean, et cetera, but like they kept showing up. That says something about what you got in there.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. All I see now, looking back, is I'm a challenging presence. Like I know I am. I know I'm tiring. But I've tried to become softer. And I will say the world kind of does open up to you a little bit when you just put on a different face. It's like I remember people talking about how punchable my face was. Like online and stuff, and I was like, "Do I have a punchable face?" And I think what happened was I just exuded that kind of like, and
Yep.
and I hope I have a slightly less punchable face now. Like I genuinely hope that someone reading I think men in particular aren't great at sharing these things and try to muscle through them. Dana White, fucking idiot, last week was just talking about, he hates the men's health movement and all this kind of stuff. Well, good. Look at you. You beat your wife in a casino. Like that's the other path. And that's not the right. That's no good for anybody.
The idea of the word traditionally, especially I remember in the 90s, oh my God, especially in hip hop, the word soft. Oh
Yeah.
God, like that's the worst quality a man could have, like
Weak.
or soft. But like, it's just kind of like some old horse shit. You know what I mean? Come on now. Like, like we're trying to be human beings here, dude. Like you could be manly as fuck and be vulnerable and sensitive and shit like that.
Yeah. I mean, I'll put up my patio stone laying with anybody. I can lift heavy objects. I think I'm fairly manly. I got my back waxed. I got to get that taken care of.
the house, bro.
I can do some things with my hands.
Just like I was like, yo, my man, like actually is one of those dudes, especially in Vermont. Like every dude up here is like they can build shit and
Chop wood,
measure, cords of fucking wood and all this.
Yeah.
Shit. But like, yeah, you're like a dude's dude in that way. You can do a lot of those traditional guy things.
I can do that. And I also cry 3 or 4 times a day. And that's just, I hope that's, well, you know what? It is okay. I'm going to take Grant Wall as that's who I am.
Fuck yeah, dude. And let me
Take it or leave it.
I actually think there's more quote unquote tough looking dudes that cry a couple of times a day than, they probably don't talk about that part of it. But they when they read their book, they'll see themselves in you. And I think that's what it is. It's not a universal book, but like you could see yourself. I could see myself in you, like, and the fact that you're willing to talk about things that most of us like, that thing I'm ashamed of. I don't want to talk about it, let alone write about it,
Yeah.
So thank you, man. I appreciate that. I got a lot out of it.
I'm glad. Thank you for reading it. And I hope there's moments in there that give you resolution to do good things. That's my hope.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris.
Man.
Yes, that was Chris Jones, author of Legs, Hearts, Minds, Loss and Its Remedies, published by Random House, available June 9th at booksellers everywhere. Thanks again to Chris. Hope the book is a huge success. On the back end of things here at Dig This, thanks to the man in the blue bathrobe for the tunes and to John Partham for making sure everything sounds better than bad. It's your boy AB. Thanks again for stopping by, and we'll see you soon.